Thank you. All right, everybody, welcome to today's episode of We Are Start Talking. I am Gareth, one of your hosts or your host for today. I'm excited to bring you an amazing episode. I am pretty excited to welcome my guest, Lisa Tabrizi, to the show. Lisa, how are you today?
I'm great. Really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Wow, thank you so much for making the time and coming on to share with the guests. Before we jump in, I'm just gonna go over a little bit of housekeeping for the listeners. We just wanted to let you know that we have our brand new Patreon account, and we really appreciate any support. So if you can contribute, you can jump over there, you can subscribe. We've got some merchandise deals, we got some exclusive content, some other cool stuff on there. So jump on over. It's www.patreon.com/start talking. You can head over there, have a little look at what we're up to, and also please, if you like the episode, you're enjoying the show, jump onto wherever you listen to your podcast, give us a quick review or a 5-star rating on there if you're loving what we're doing, because it really helps us to get the message out to more people. So we truly appreciate the support. So again, Lisa, welcome. We are going to dig into some amazing content today, and we're going to talk a lot about, what you're doing in the world right now and how it aligns with, We Are Start Talking. Lisa is a naturopathic doctor. She's based in on Ontario, Canada, close by to, where I am situated. And she's also a keen athlete, a keen cyclist, and she's also involved in an amazing organization called the Hope Approach, which we're going to touch on a little bit as well. So I'd like to just hand it over to you, Lisa, to give us a little bit of an introduction on you and also, the world of being a naturopathic doctor, what it's all about and, what you do on a daily basis, and just kind of share a little bit of that with the listeners.
So I'm a naturopathic doctor, as you said, and I have a practice in downtown Hamilton. I've been practicing for this is my 10th year, so an auspicious year of practice. And as a naturopath, I see a variety of people for many different concerns. It could be as simple as a rash like eczema. It could be they're feeling a low mood, or they're feeling depressed or anxious. It may be hormonal issues, chronic pain, digestive issues, maybe a child who's feeling nauseous going to school, maybe manifesting as a little bit of anxiety. So I have a really eclectic practice, all different ages, all different walks of life. And as a naturopath, what my goal is to really educate and empower my patients to take more simple, sustainable approaches to their health. And so when they're working with me, first of all, I should point out my motto is simply healthy, simply strong. So that's really kind of the driving force of what I'm doing with my patients. But the tools that I'm using, like how I'm getting them, maybe that improved health or that more energy, that better sleep, it could be a variety of things. It may be looking at what their nutrition is like, what nutrients are lacking in their diet. It may be, do they need certain blood tests being completed? Is there a physical exam they need? Is there a certain herb or supplement or vitamin that they might benefit from? So we're really looking for individualized medicine, individualized care. No two people coming in are going to get the exact same treatment plan, because we're really looking at not only what's going on with that person's health, but what's going on with their life. What's their lifestyle like? Are they exercising? Are they going outside? Are they on their phone all day or on TV? Are they maybe a teenager that's like not able to go to school because they're so anxious? So we really need to understand, or I need to understand, what their lifestyle is like and what are their relationships like around them, because all of those factors really play into their health and well-being and guide me in knowing what is the best treatment approach that this person needs, what's something that they can handle at this point in time as we move towards that better health, that better version of themselves.
Yeah, that's such a great kind of, I guess, a summary, because it's no doubt a very complex and a deep practice on many levels, and that's just a really wonderful summary. And it's nice to hear that it kind of covers everybody. You spoke a lot about kind of kids with schooling, and probably a lot right now as they're being schooled on the computer here than as opposed to in an actual school. And it crosses over to adults, and things is and I say a skin condition simple, but something that's simple and kind of common, if you like, as opposed to the more complex things. So it's really nice to hear that. You touched a fair bit in your kind of summary there about anxiety. I think that's a massive part of, I guess, the world we live in right now. And selfishly, that's something that I've kind of struggled with a little bit. I'd love to hear a bit about how that's treated in regards to naturopathic medicine.
Well, certainly. And you're certainly not alone. I think right now, especially with the pandemic, there's definitely like a global hum of this like kind of anxiety that everyone is sort of able to kind of feel almost. But even before the pandemic, I saw a lot of anxiety and sort of mood issues in my practice. And so again, we're going to look at, how is that manifesting in each person? Like, is it more physical symptoms you're experiencing? Is it more the thoughts and rumination and worries and that sort of kind of stress response, as a panic attack? So really understanding like what is the individual's anxiety like and how is it presenting will really help me to guide them to the best treatment strategies. So a lot of the times I love acupuncture. I practice a lot of traditional Chinese medicine in my practice, and acupuncture works beautifully to regulate the nervous system, to kind of calm that fight or flight response that leads to symptoms of anxiety. I like using a lot of just mindfulness based and stress reduction techniques in my practice as well. So I do a lot of guided meditations with my patients. I encourage them to do it in their day to day, and also different mindfulness techniques too, like things like Tai Chi and Qigong are things that can be really, really helpful. Mindful exercises really benefit those people who are like, I can't meditate, I can't sit there, they get agitated, it maybe feeds into their anxiety. Activities like Qigong, which is similar to Tai Chi, has a little bit more of a medical background to it, or activities like yoga, those can be really meditative types of exercise that can help reduce anxiety as well. And so those would be sort of lifestyle techniques. And then we could look at, okay, how's the nutrition side of things? A lot of people with anxiety do not have enough protein in their diet or enough healthy fats in their diet. And if you're a really active person, you're going to have even higher requirements for protein and healthy fats. If you're a male, you're going to have higher requirements as well, depending on your age and whatnot. There's different requirements at different points in our life. But protein is such an important building block for neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine that regulate our mood, regulate our sleep, and our feelings of happiness and ability to experience joy. That if you don't have enough protein in your diet, how can you manifest or manufacture these important nutrients? And so looking at, or even keeping your just blood sugar stable. A lot of mood issues come from an instability in the blood sugar. And so the more we can help stabilize that blood sugar so there's not extreme spikes and extreme drops, people are also going to have more even moods as well. So long story short, how can we help anxiety? There's so many different tools at our disposal as a naturopath. I definitely do a lot of listening in my practice. A lot of patients will almost apologize. Oh, I shared so much today about what's going on. And like that in itself, that sharing of what's going on in your life, that being heard by another person, being heard by yourself and voicing those concerns, that in itself is so healing as well. And I think people often forget or underestimate the power of just even a conversation. A meaningful conversation has such a great value for our health.
Yeah, for sure. And, we are obviously massive advocates of that. As we start talking, conversations being the kind of genesis of this podcast. And I think it goes across so many things, like, the anxiety, the getting it out there, speaking it, having those conversations, and also having a safe space to do that, which is important. Now, whether that's in the, coming into that treatment room with a patient, whatever kind of practitioner it is, or therapist it is, and even a podcast, or just another person that you're connected with, or a phone call with somebody that you feel safe with, to be able to talk those things through are so important. And it was really interesting to me, you spoke about protein requirements in regards to anxiety, which is fascinating to me, and it also aligns so massively with the world of fitness. And I love your your kind of motto of keeping things simple, and that's what I'm all about in the world of fitness and coaching, because it truly is that. And I often just joke with my clients, I'm like, nothing ever changes. I'm like, it's all about energy balance. Hit your protein requirements, worry about everything else after that. You're going to be good. Keep it balanced. And nutrition can be very complex, but it can be very simple. And obviously from my end, it's always going to be that very simple approach with just a basic qualifications in nutrition. But it comes back around the same thing, like we're speaking the same message across many industries. And it's so important to help build that lean muscle tissue, to help with recovery. That's going to help with your sleep, and it all kind of ties into what you're saying. And I love how it ties into anxiety and how nutrition can help that, because I think so many people would miss that as part of the puzzle.
And it's so simple, like it's something so basic. And people nowadays, they want to overcomplicate everything. So they want this like elaborate meal plan. Well, what should I eat? And da da da. And I think I sometimes like maybe disappoint some of them because I'm trying to keep it much more simple and much more general. It's like, okay, you need to have protein at your meal. Here's protein options. You need to have vegetables. Should be half of your plate. What are vegetables you're willing to eat? Are there some new ones I can introduce you to? I try to keep it a little bit more general, giving them maybe some fresh recipe ideas or some fresh maybe meal ideas that they hadn't thought of. But I think they're trying to what foods should I not eat together? And they're just overcomplicating things. And that's adding more to the anxiety, more to that stress, because then you're constantly wondering, am I doing the right thing? And I see a lot of people with anxiety where they're creating a lot of stress for themselves in over analyzing every decision that they're making. And I think, again, it can be simple. Like, just think, is the choice I'm making right now, is this food I'm eating or this activity or behavior I'm doing, is it nourishing my health? Is it allowing me to be the best version of myself? And if the answer is no, okay, well, why are you reaching for it? And what could you do that's maybe a little bit less harmful, maybe a little more moving towards that better version of yourself, if you're not ready to make that huge leap? If the issue feels too big, maybe you're an alcoholic and it feels too drastic to make a lot of life changes at once. But what's something simple you can do that's going to reduce that harm and start moving you into that right direction?
Yeah, absolutely. And just the fact that you said these things helped you to be the best version of yourself, you can officially be the We As Start Talking Naturopathic Doctor moving forward, because we live by that. It's the how we sign off the show. It's everything we're about. So I love that. It makes me think, when you talk about the simplicity of it, it makes me think about something I talk about a lot in, we have I have a fair few fitness guests that come on, and wellness people, from my kind of connections. And I talk a lot about how I kind of coach and how I approach things. And what I've always said is, and this is, I kind of lived by this for the last 20 years, is the fitness industry and the wellness, etc., particularly nutrition and fitness, is very simple. It's about 10% fact. It's about 90% opinion. Because people always ask me, what's new in fitness, what's new in nutrition, what's new in, and I'm like, nothing. It's the same. We're still squatting, lunging, pushing, pulling, twisting. There's still 3 macronutrients. Nothing's changing. Drink your water, get some sleep. It's very simple, but like you said, we overcomplicate. And I always say to people, everyone's going to be giving you that same message. It's finding the person that, the naturopathic doctor, the fitness coach, the therapist that walks you through the journey of the 90% opinion in the way that suits you. And it sounds like you're very much about that too.
Absolutely. And in some cases, sometimes a weight loss issue, let's say if someone's, coming to you for fitness for weight loss and improving their body composition, sometimes it could be an issue with their hormones, like their thyroid or whatnot. But a lot of the times it is much simpler than that. And it is simply calories in, calories out. Are you moving? Are you not moving? But sometimes people are not looking for that answer. They're looking for that quick fix, and they're hoping I have that magic bullet, that magic supplement that's going to make them lose weight. Certainly there are some nutrients that can help improve, like say reducing fatty liver and things like that. But it's not going to be a magic bullet without the combination of doing those healthy lifestyle things. So I really kind of push back on those patients and say, are you ready to make a change? Like, you just taking, for example, like N-acetylcysteine. It's a helpful antioxidant that can reduce fatty liver disease. It's not going to do it in a vacuum. You still have to make sure you're not drinking alcohol and trying to lose weight and trying to improve your diet. If you're not willing to do it, maybe it will reduce some of that issue a little bit, but you'll get so much more benefit the more we can treat your body holistically, and the more positive health choices you're willing to make. Things will just start to cycle in a positive avalanche rather than like a vicious cycle.
Yep. Yeah. It's so speaking the same language. I think selfishly I love it because it makes me feel like I know what I'm talking about, and I'm not an imposter, which is always great. But it's so much like we speak that same message across many industries, and I love that it's coming through, because I've had and not to discredit the qualifications of other medical professionals. However, I've had issues in the past where it's deemed to be way more complex than it actually is. And like I said, I'm giving that simple advice of, yes, it might be something, but if you go to the doctor and they say they do your blood work, they examine you, nothing's going on, I'm like, here's my advice: go away, not for 2 weeks, but go away for 6 months and do all these things. And if it's not working, with 6 months of consistency, then come back. And sometimes I've had a pushback, but it's so nice to hear that it's aligned, and maybe that's a little bit of my direction, as well as, people like yourself, in the world of, in the naturopathic world, that are still talking the same language and promoting the same thing, which is such a good thing to hear, because we all need everyone around us to be aligned. And like I said, finding the right people that align around us, which will really help us on any journey that we're taking.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just even to touch back on you, we were talking about anxiety earlier. One thing that's often a simple thing that's often overlooked in conventional medicine, a lot of people are, well, it's anxiety, it's in your head. But a lot of times nutrient deficiencies like iron deficiency, vitamin B12, vitamin D, even zinc possibly, when those nutrients are low, they're going to exacerbate and lead to an increased feeling of anxiety and dis-ease in the body, that sort of, anxious agitation or insomnia. And a lot of the times those nutrients, when they're replenished, are going to maybe not cure the anxieties. Maybe part of it is in the way you're thinking, but will help to reduce some of those symptoms. And I see this a lot in patients who are eating more carbohydrate type diets, or are vegetarian or vegan, and they're not getting enough of those adequate nutrients. And this is where it can cycle back into, again, keeping things simple, but making sure you're getting the most well-rounded, most just holistically minded approach, that we haven't left anything unturned or uncovered.
Yeah, it's so true. And it makes me also think that, when you talk about the anxiety and how there's many things that affect that, another thing that comes up for me is people's sleep patterns, and how, you spoke about being the best version. We talk about being the best version. I can't see where, with anxiety, especially people with a lot of anxiety, don't typically sleep very well. Very broken sleep, not a lot of deep, sleep where they're kind of regenerating. And I know what I feel like if I have a bad night's sleep. There's no best version of me that's had, 3 or 4 hours of decent sleep a night. Like, if I'm not getting my sleep and I'm not in bed and asleep by 10 o'clock, and then I can't get up and do as I need to do. So is that, I wonder, what I'm kind of leaning towards here is, obviously sleep affects a lot of people, and I'd love to hear a bit about that. But I'm also wondering how the pandemic and people's massive change in routine, are you seeing that a lot with patients? Is it affecting their sleep and their routine to the point where it's shifting their mindset?
Well, definitely. I mean, I think for a lot of people, their lack of their routine of like leaving the house, having a set schedule, coming and going, seeing people outside of your household, having a break from their kids or their spouse, that disruption has led to a lot more heightened stress. And over the last few weeks, with children being at home doing the virtual learning, has been a tremendous stress for a lot of my patients, both whether they are a parent or they're the teacher side of things. And so I'm seeing a lot of adults, not so much the kids. I mean, the kids are kind of okay. They're maybe not as engaged and whatnot, but I haven't been getting a lot of complaints from kids, having increased mental health issues per se. It's more the parents. They're under a lot of stress, having to do their job, having to see the kids, or teach the kids at the same time. And certainly that impacts their sleep and impacts their mood. And so trying to create those, again, simple, just routines throughout the day, like what can you do that's within your control right now to create some sort of schedule and routine? Can you go to bed and wake up at the same time? Can you cut off your screen time at a certain time? Can you, even though we're only at home, we're not getting that break, can you create your home environment so that it's like a really comforting atmosphere? Can you create an even more comfortable, soft atmosphere in the evening? So you're telling your nervous system, you know what, this is time for me to wind down. This is not time for me to check my emails. This is time for my nervous system to start recognizing I need to slow down. When we were pioneers, well, what happened when we didn't have electricity? Like after dinner, it was dark. You're not doing work. You're around the fire, you're playing the banjo and coming together as a family. And it's like quiet time and relaxing fun time. Now it's like we can kind of zombie through our life watching Netflix or on our phone. And it's like not meaningful connection. And so if people can start recreating that, like those positive connections within their family unit, maybe you're playing board games after dinner, maybe you're putting on some nice music, creating soft lighting, trying to keep the clutter down. So all that tells your nervous system, I'm okay, I'm relaxed. I don't have to be in fight or flight all the time, right? Because a lot of times people are just vibrating at this very anxious level. They can't shut off and then they don't sleep properly. So the more you can kind of train your body, put your own inner child to bed, right? We have routines for kids at bedtime, But then as adults, we think I'm a light switch and I'll just shut the light off and go to bed, and you're laying there, wide awake with all the thoughts of the day. Train yourself that I'm winding down, and that will really help your sleep, which will be so paramount to improving your mood, your outlook, your ability to look after the people that you're in contact with in a way that's positive, rather than you acting irritable or resentful or whatever.
Yeah, it's so true, right? And you think about any time, and I'm sure there's plenty of people listening this will resonate with. How do you feel when you have that poor night's sleep? Like your temper is short, your nutrition choices are poor, you're probably not getting as much activity. You're not going to be geared up to go out for an extra walk or do a workout at home, or in other times, or maybe in other provinces, go to the gym if it's open. Hopefully there will be soon. You're not going to show up and want to do that, right, when you have a bad night's sleep. And sometimes so that is part and parcel of that sleep. And then the other part of that, I think, is dropping ego. I spoke about this actually earlier on a podcast, actually a podcast I was a guest on, where we have to learn to drop the ego and know that, hey, you know what? We wake up. I actually woke up this morning my alarm went off at 5 as normal, and I went use the bathroom as I always do, and then I was like, nope, I'm not going to go work out. I'm going back to bed. I went back to bed for an hour and 15 minutes. I had to get up and coach my clients online, but I did that, and and I referenced that this morning too, because I had to drop my ego of I have to get up and train because it's my time to train, and I did it at lunchtime. And you know what? I was fine at lunchtime. It was kind of a bit more energy. I'd had a couple of meals. And I'd focused on my day. I'd moved a little bit, so it was a totally different approach. And I think that's so important that we are able to, I don't know, I guess drop the ego, drop the comparison, and be okay with where we're at, whether that's sleep related or stress related or whatever it might be. And I'm sure that's a conversation you have a lot.
Oh, definitely. And if people are feeling more anxiety, they tend to be more like they're doing a lot. They're getting too much done almost, like they're going. So it's even more important to do what you did this morning, where you recognize, I listened to my body. This is not the day where I need to keep pushing. I really would benefit from a little bit more sleep. And it can work the other way too. For the person who's maybe more depressed, who wants to maybe like sleep too much, have the hypersomnia, they have to also work to motivate themselves to like have that discipline to like, no, I'm going to get out of bed. I've had 12 hours of sleep. I don't need any more, even though I'm tired, right? Like it can be, again, we want that balance. Whatever your resting point is, if your scale is off here and you're sleeping too much, then you need to have more discipline to like kind of move things more to the middle. And if you're the other person where you're not sleeping enough and you're always doing, you need to kind of move towards the middle and have a little bit more of that downtime, right? So it's all the Goldilocks rule. So
Yeah.
just right? And when you're not sleeping, you're not your best version of yourself, like we were touching on earlier. So sleep is so paramount. If you want to be your best version of yourself and show up every day, you really need to prioritize sleep and recognize how important it is.
Yeah, that's so true. You know what? I talk about it a lot. I actually listened to a very long audiobook. You probably heard of it, Why We Sleep. Super interesting. I listened to it on my morning walks, and actually, funny enough, I listened to it during the pandemic because I've been walking a lot because there's not been so much else to do. And it's funny, I spoke to quite a few clients and people in my circle I was connected with right back in March 2020. I remember the day all the gyms closed in Canada, or a lot of the big chains did, and everyone else kind of followed suit. I remember that morning getting up and reading some emails, and there'd been stuff happening over that weekend. And that Monday morning, where everything was kind of official, like we're like locking down most things, and I was kind of like, well, I'm not going to be doing any work today. And I was up at my normal time of like 5 a.m. And I got up, I went and got coffee, I went for an hour-odd walk. I was listening to some news, and then I listened to some audiobook, and I decided that day that this might only be 2 or 3 weeks. It might be longer. So I made a decision to keep my schedule, and people were like, you're insane. Why are you getting up at 5 a.m. and walking your dog? Why are you getting up at 5 a.m.? And I actually switched it up. I now typically work out at 5 a.m., but I was up working. I was going to coach, or I was just up on my day doing my workouts, whatever needed to be early. And I typically do that when my family's asleep because they sleep a bit longer than I do. And I just kept it. And I'm to this day, a year nearly later, I'm still just on my same schedule. And I tried to keep that schedule. And it was absolutely the standout point that made me mentally be able to cope with the last year. So, I'm so glad I did that and I shared it with so many people because it made such a big difference to me. And so many other people have set that routine in their life, like my clients and people that I coach. And everything you say is just it's so true, and it's going to be so impactful for anyone listening. So if you're listening to this right now and you need to go to sleep, listen to the rest tomorrow. But it's amazing and I love that book. Matthew Walker, I think, is the author. It's so important that we learn not just about, the mental, the anxiety, the recovery from exercise and activity, but so many other things that sleep is important for. So I would definitely recommend, tracking that, getting your, like you said, your bedtime and your getting up time and keeping that routine, and getting everyone in your house on a routine too, because I found that to be really important. Although I like their routine to be later than mine, so I have peace and quiet in the morning, which is always important.
And even keeping that routine, like your weekday, like unless you have a really non-traditional job where maybe you're a shift worker or whatnot, but for most people, it's like keep the weekday and the weekend a little bit separate. Like make there something to denote that difference so that you have that sense of, even if you're not maybe working in the same way or whatnot, because when you're working from home, well, you can just start working all the time and there's not that distinct, like, start and end, and it can bleed into everything. And then everything, a lot of people keep saying, well, it feels like Groundhog Day. Every day feels the same. Like work to make that so it's not the same, like that you still have maybe a different routine on the weekend than you do during the weekday, to symbolize that it's the weekend, I'm going to rest. And if your weekend is in the middle of the week, like let's not split hairs, but you get what I'm saying, where you have a couple of days of rest and downtime where your routine is different than when you're working whatever your your career or your passion is.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so funny because as soon as you said that, I was like, "Yep, that's my Sunday." So I have a little tip first for the listeners, and they may have heard this on other shows. So I talk about it all the time, but I have a silent alarm on my smartwatch. And honestly, if you want to invest in something that keeps your household sane and you get up earlier than everybody, get a silent alarm that vibrates on your wrist, because it helps me keep on my schedule, but it doesn't piss anyone else off. And that is very important in my house, that my wife and my daughter get their sleep and I don't wake them up. So I'm very quiet and I creep down to the basement to work out. But so that's one little tip that I think is just so important. And have that day, like Sunday mornings is my wife sleeps in extra. And I get up and we get the blankets out and I snuggle up and we watch movies at like 6:30 on a Sunday morning. But typically I'm up and out walking the dog and she wakes up, or I'm working out or whatever. So that's my day where I change it. It's exactly like you said, right? Have that day that's a little different and be able to make someone else's life easier. So I'd like to, keep the peace in my house, and my wife gets an extra line, which she loves. I wanted to kind of go back to one thing you said, and this is something that is so important to me. You spoke about kind of having, those people in your kind of circle and people you can trust and people you can go to, and we kind of touched on that, and it made me think about our core value at We As Start Talking, which is surround yourself. And I actually think you even said that, which again you're definitely on my list as our official doctor. But it's the surrounding yourself, and we talk about that in our kind of the people, like my Scott and Carl, who are also the hosts of the show. My family and my close friends and people that I have in my kind of inner circle. And I think it spreads out to, what you're doing in your world for your patients and, other, therapists and other types of doctors and whoever it might be. Like I have a physio, I have a chiropractor, I have a therapist. So it's a big kind of circle. And one of my good friends and one of my clients is very similar. She talks about that. She has a kind of team of people, and she always calls it her team, and she's like, you're one of my team, and so's my my doctor, so's my social worker, so's my my specialist. It's so important that we have that, and I'd love for you to touch a little bit on how you kind of see yourself in that kind of surround yourself with your patients, and how that kind of connects you to their inner circle or even their kind of outer circle, and how you kind of see that with other practitioners and other people in your kind of field and also other fields.
Well, certainly I find myself feeling a lot like the connector with my patients. Like I have a lot of resources. I certainly am an extroverted person, so I meet people easily and make relationships quite easily. And so over the years of, just doing different things like a podcast or giving a talk, or, I don't know, doing a presentation at another maybe physio clinic. Like, I get invited to do all kinds of different things. And it's beautiful because it allows me to meet other practitioners or other just people that I might be able to connect my patients with. Maybe someone has never heard what an osteopath is, and they're coming in with a lot of chronic body pain. That's not really explained by, that they haven't really torn a ligament or whatnot, but they're having a chronic shoulder pain and a hip pain. And, I might suggest to them, well, we're doing acupuncture, but have you thought of seeing an osteopath before? And, in my practice, I work with other like-minded healthcare providers. So I have an osteopath at my office, and social worker and psychotherapist and massage therapist. So I really can quite easily connect them with, even in my own clinic, but also I have lots of other practitioners or people that I can connect them with in the community. Sometimes it's even community organizations, right? Whether it's, I work in Hamilton, so there's a really great organization called Mood Menders, and they meet, I think weekly or a few times a week. They have different organized kind of like drop-in sessions. And so sometimes it's connecting people with different community organizations so that they can get the best help that they need. And again, know that they're not alone, that other people are experienced in this concern, that there's other people maybe suffering or experiencing what they've been enduring, and that there is light at the end of the tunnel, that they can feel better and get back to that best version of themselves. So I really, I don't know if I've answered your question, but anyway, long story short, I really try to connect people with other like-minded practitioners that I think will offer them some benefit. And even sometimes it's getting them to work on their household relationships. A lot of people, especially if they live alone, it can be very easy to be isolated. And even if you live with a family, that you're all there, but you're all on your own phone and not necessarily connecting in a meaningful way. And even those relationships, even though they're not necessarily, a professional relationship, they have a lot of impact on our stress and well-being as well, maybe even more in many cases. And so creating those healthy relationships, it becomes so important. We're wired as humans for connection, and we thrive and again, for lack of repeating myself, but just feeling like your best version of yourself when you're surrounded with, like-minded people that you feel connected with.
You can say best version of yourself 7,000 times on this show and it'll never be too much. It's so true. And it makes me also think about, it's a couple of things, and I'll share a story to cement this point. But you mentioned earlier about how you're seeing a lot of kind of parents struggling a little bit with anxiety and stress management and navigating with their kids, but you're not seeing so many kids, in that environment. I'm very fortunate that we have our daycares open in York region where I am, and our daughter's been going 3 days a week still, and we've made that priority to keep that going for her for that reason. But a lot of people don't have that luxury right now, and schools are still closed, although I hear they're reopening again soon. Is we're having kids at home, and although you may not be seeing, and maybe other people aren't seeing so many kids, my thought goes to, if parents aren't reaching out for help and aren't reaching out for the support they need, is what we imprint on our kids now, although they might not be directly in that kind of stress maybe that we're in right now. Where are they 5, 6 years, 20 years from now as adults, with what's being imprinted on them and how we kind of manage that? And like you said, working from home. And the story I had, literally this happened yesterday, and myself and my wife spoke about it with she had to step out to take a phone call for work. She had to go out and do something, and she was with our daughter, and she said, I just need to pop out and go make a phone call. And this is, so our daughter's nearly 4. She's generally 99.9% of the show perfect with toilet training. Like, she takes herself to the toilet, she does everything, she doesn't need any help. She's been doing it for about a year, and my wife stepped out to do something because she's kind of working, and she's home, and she was home with us yesterday because she's at daycare every other day, and she peed on the carpet in the spare room. She never does it. She's like, oh, whoops, I peed in my underwear. And I'm like, that doesn't sound. And anyway, so we kind of dug in a little bit with her, and we spoke about it, and we're like, you know what? That just sounds like what we call the protest pee, where, they don't want that and they show it. So with the smaller children particularly, sometimes they can't articulate, or they don't want to say what it is, right? But sometimes we have to be so aware. And we had a conversation where we're both guilty of doing that because we're trying to work and navigate work. however we're at home. So it's hard to say, I can't right now, I'm working, or I'm on my phone because I'm answering emails or whatever. So it's just made me think about that. And that was something that's obviously fresh in my mind, where obviously we felt terrible because we'd been maybe in the just not aware enough to step away from that. And like you said, right, maybe we have to just take those moments to connect, close our laptop. So we made a little deal in our house about kind of timings and when we'd leave our phones in the other room, and just try to be more cognizant of that, because I think there's some long lasting effect on our kids right now, and maybe 5 years from now how that's going to look. Yeah, it's scary.
For sure. And even being observant that, those kind of odd changes, that's something that your daughter wouldn't normally do, that it could signify like something's going on for her. Like maybe she's feeling anxious, but she can't voice it. And so it manifests in a physical way. It could be also she got comforted by you as well, right? So there's like, there's that piece as well. And so being keen to just notice those little changes and to respond to them appropriately, I think will really, really help kids through this time as well. Just being aware and responsive to their needs and what's going on. And the more you can recognize those cues in like the smaller stages, it won't lead to something that's so big and so hard to manage that you end up needing more professionals to help that sort of thing.
Yeah, let's not make any more messed up adults if we can help it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like just notice those little cues in the moment, and being present will help you to notice those little cues or those little shifts. And really, as a parent, your job is to help your child become an adult human. Like as a kid, you don't know you're anxious or you're stressed, or you don't know what anger is, right? You show it in your behavior. And so helping children to learn that terminology too and understand what emotions are, that can be really helpful, and in an age appropriate way, of course, but that can be really meaningful for young children.
Yeah, we always have conversations with so Carl, who's the co-host of the show. We always have conversations about how he has a daughter, but he has an adult now. She's now an adult, but he has a son who's younger, and my daughter's younger than that. And we always talk about how we're raising, like he's raising a man and I'm raising a woman. Like I'm raising a woman, I'm raising a child. Like she needs to be ready for the world, so it's age appropriate. However, we will talk in proper terminology. We will label body parts the right way. We will label emotions the right way. We'll use proper adult words, and there's a time and a place for sure for the levity in those relationships. But she needs to understand that stuff, and I want her to be able to speak and be understood. It's so important for their development, but also for the the times in the where the world's not perfect, and things can happen, and kids can be in situations, or adults can be in situations where they need to be able to vocalize what's going on, and understand that stuff. It's so important, and so many adults can't vocalize that now, let alone as kids, right? So yeah,
Absolutely.
it's so important.
And remembering too, like you're a parent, you're a human too. You don't have to be a perfect parent, right? I was having a conversation with a patient earlier today, and the person was lamenting, oh, I'm going to mess up my kid and yada, yada. It's like, yeah, well, no parent's perfect. And aren't we all have some sort of, we're messed up from some way or shape or form from our parents. That's part of being a human. Part of it is overcoming that of there's going to be those imperfections and those moments where you're a human, you're not operating from your best place. And certainly we want to strive to not come from that tired, irritable version of ourselves, where you're not going to show your kids your best self, but just recognizing the humanness of that process of being a parent.
Yeah, and express that to your kids. That's one big message that I always say, and I'm hardly the parenting expert over here, but it's definitely something that I recognize. And I always people always ask me about how can you constantly be the best version of yourself? And I'm like, exactly like you said, Lisa, it's not about being perfect. Being the best version of yourself is being aware of when you're not, and addressing that. And even if it is, and people say that's crazy, I'm like, sitting down and explaining to a 4-year-old or a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old, that I, that wasn't the best way for me to respond. Daddy understands that. That's not, I'm going to learn from it. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's maybe what we can do together so those situations don't come up. Maybe you can communicate this better to me. Maybe, whatever it might be, and trying to have that conversation and apologize when I make a mistake, because that's something that I know, I'm coming up 40. That's something that never happened to me as a kid. Like my parents, they did the best they could. They gave me a great childhood. However, they didn't sit down and apologize when they made a mistake in parenting. It was, I'm right, you're wrong, because that's the way I think most people in that generation were probably parented. things obviously evolve, and that's one big thing that I kind of learned from my journey, was that I'm always going to do that. I'm always going to sit, I'm going to apologize, I'm going to be vulnerable and open, because I know that will hopefully give her better tools when she's an adult. Fingers crossed. We don't mess anyone else up. So I wanted to, a couple of things I want to touch on. You touched a little bit on the kind of, you mentioned inflammation and kind of pain management, and we kind of went loosely into those things, but this is something that stands out for me quite a lot in regards to mindset, because these are conversations I have a lot in my world, whether it's on the podcast or within coaching, is people's mindset and how it associates to people that have got chronic inflammation or chronic pain. And I'd love to just kind of hear your thoughts on what you see, maybe, obviously, being, full discretion, for your patients, but what you see in regards to how people can show up in the world as, authentically and as the best version of themselves, and, have that mindset when they're living with chronic pain, and they're, managing that, and, and maybe how are you treating that as well, with your patients?
Well, and that can be really complex, and it often depends too on what's the kind of pain, and there's different kinds of chronic pain or acute pain. But certainly listening to the body, when our body's in pain, it's trying to tell us, like, pay attention to me. I need you to pay attention. Maybe you were ignoring me before, and it gets to a point where, once you're getting a physical symptom that's speaking out to you, your body is like trying to wake you up, like, hello, listen. And so thinking about what is that pain trying to tell you, are you experiencing a lot of digestive pain because you're eating poorly? Or is it a joint issue and whatnot? Is it a strain injury from maybe working out too much and not having enough recovery time? So looking at, first of all, what's leading to that chronic pain. Is it something more complex, like maybe it's an autoimmune disease that can lead to a lot of joint pain? And so what's number one, the etiology behind why you're experiencing the pain, number one. But also number two, looking at, the mind. It's tricky, because what I'm trying to get at is pain can affect the mind, but then the mind can affect pain. And so that mindset shift that I think you were referring to a bit earlier, it becomes so tightly intertwined. The more we can balance our nervous system and improve our outlook, improve our spirits, even amidst pain and suffering, because that's part of being a human. We're going to suffer, we're going to feel pain, whether it's emotional or physical or both, and sometimes both at the same time. Really, we need to work on just improving that outlook and that perspective on life, so that we can see the bigger picture, not get stuck on the detail of my elbow hurts or my neck hurts, and putting all of your energy into that pain. When you put all of your energy into that pain, it becomes just all encompassing. You're not going to be able to focus on your children or your work or making dinner if you're letting that pain consume you. And obviously in some cases, maybe it's, severe pain, like, there's been a lot of fires in the news lately. Well, if you're someone who's experienced a lot of burns, obviously that's a catastrophic, severe type of pain. But even in severe situations like that, I would still say people can have control of their mind and try to focus on the bigger picture. What are things you can control? What's maybe nutrition that you can focus on? How can we improve your sleep so that you're getting the best sleep possible? Because when we repair the nervous system at night, you're going to have less pain during the day. And so I feel like I'm kind of repeating myself, but a lot of it ties into what we were talking about earlier as well. But I would say with pain too, really making sure you're listening to your body. There can be a fine line between pushing through pain, but that could cause more aggravation. And so it's that fine line. But sometimes people are experiencing more pain because they are more sedentary. So it's really that Goldilocks rule of not too much, not too little, just right, and what's right for that individual.
Yeah, that's it's so true, and I love your take on that kind of kind of the mindset and how the mind can kind of control the pain a little bit as opposed to the other way. And I definitely think there's a and this is not to label everyone in another generation, but I noticed that sometimes in a generation or two prior to mine, there's a kind of a reliance on shall we call traditional or medication, let's just call it. Be very careful what I say, but relying on medication and the how the mind controls the pain. So, and I see that a lot with people saying, I've just got this issue and I'm just going to take this medication that I was given. And that's the be all and end all solve of everything. And don't get me wrong, I 100% am on board with any medication that's going to help someone through something. However, as I'm sure you're a massive advocate of is, there's many other ways. And people dismiss that. And I see this in fitness all the time. Like you said, well, I'll just take a supplement. Well, no. How about, you need to balance your nutrition. You need to drink your water. You need to get your sleep. You need to move every day. Get 10,000 steps. Do all that first, right?
The supplement like like a pharmaceutical. Well, I'm just going to take that pill, even if it's a natural pill. Somehow it's better, and I don't have to make any change. It's like it's never so simple. The body's too complex for that.
Yeah, it's so true, and we can so be. It's almost like a brainwashing. Like we have to, and this is probably, we could probably talk about 1,000 conspiracy theories outside of medical and naturopathic and everything else. But it's so true that we can be governed by our mind, and we can almost convince ourselves that we're not in pain, but maybe convince ourselves that we've got that and we're just going to medicate because that's the only way. And there are so many other things, right? Like if it's more movement, and, I hear this a lot. A good example is, well, I can't squat because my knees hurt. I'm like, your knees hurt because you can't squat. It's very different, right? Like you convince yourself that it's just this thing and that's what I've got and I can't do it. And I'm like, no, it's likely the other way around. Like if you don't have functional movement of your body, you're going to get pain and discomfort, but you're going to have to get up and down out of the chair and off the toilet for the rest of your life. So I suggest we fix that now rather than seeing it as a barrier, which I think people see those barriers and then they lean on maybe medicating because there's nothing else, right?
It's a fine balance of like, don't become a victim of your pain and let that be an excuse for, I don't have to, like not taking the responsibility for your health and well-being. Sometimes medication can be helpful, but certainly you still are going to need to work on those lifestyle techniques, nutrition, maybe an herb or supplement that's anti-inflammatory, depending on the situation. But again, it really does focus too on, like you said, the mind shift.
Yeah, it's kind of hand in hand, right? Like they have to go together, and and I always say that, there's place, in more so in the world of like sports supplements. I'm like, there's a place for sports supplements. I'm like, but it doesn't get you where you want to be. It's a tiny piece of the puzzle. You have to do all the other things to complement that. And, that's so important. If we don't have those things together, working together, you're likely, you lean too heavily on any one thing, you're generally not going to get the end result that you want. So yeah, it's really impactful. I know that's going to be very helpful for a lot of people listening, especially anyone kind of managing anything and shifting mindset. And the last kind of thing on that, because I want to shift gears a little bit, is it just makes me think that we have to work on also shifting the mindset and training our mind separately of that. And I spoke about this actually earlier this week, where I was talking about body image and how people were trying to flip that body image, and how do I be more positive with that, and what I see in the mirror. However, and my kind of response to that was, that's a lifelong thing, and we're so impacted by the world around us. However, if you're shifting your mindset kind of alongside that, your general perception's going to change of other things. So if you've got a more positive mindset, you're training, I was talking about, being proud of different things and journaling those things and being grateful, and many things that shift our mindset to positivity is going to shift also what we see and what we hear and what we feel. So it's hand in hand, right? And we have to work on our mind and think of our mind being stronger and developing mentally for positivity, which should then shift into everything else in life, we hope.
Well, sure. And even curating, say, what social media you consume and what media you consume, to monitor, like, are you just following on Instagram, to pick on Instagram for a moment, like these kind of unrealistic accounts where everything is Photoshopped, there's a filter put on everything. Like, look for maybe accounts that connect with your morals and your values, and that when you're doing your scroll, because we all know we're going to end up scrolling, that it's actually giving you more feeling of inspiration to be the better version of yourself, rather than feeling really crappy about yourself and feeling, more of that low self-esteem. So there's ways to certainly kind of empower yourself, even the oddest, like you would think, really, you're going to I talk to my patients about what social media they consume all the time. And that can be just as important in their mind shift and mindset and how they view themselves and view the world.
Yeah, sometimes the most useful tool on any of those is the unfollow button. And I do that regularly, like once a month, just for that exact reason, right? Because, and also as well, other people will evolve and change, right? Sometimes that's for the better or for the worse, so you have to be aware of that, and or else you're mindlessly consuming it. So yeah, I'm a big advocate of that too. Um, I wanted to shift gears just a little bit, and I wanted you to talk a little bit about the hope approach. And I know that your partner Ryan was on with Scott back on We as Dads before we kind of amalgamated our channel, and I wanted to just, because it's such a I want everyone to hear about the amazing work that's happening, and obviously share that again with anyone that's kind of new to the show. So I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about that, and and share with the listeners what you're up to.
Yeah, so we were really excited. The Hope Approach was relatively, let's say, in its beginner phases just before the pandemic. So we had only gotten a chance to kind of run a few programs before, we kind of got slapped with COVID. But the whole premise of the program, the Hope Approach, is, really instilling values with people. To connect with their sense of self, their sense of purpose, their sense of finding meaning and resiliency. And so how we're doing that is we've developed a program where there's kind of two versions of it. One where we're leading people who are feeling maybe more adventurous, more excited to look at going camping in the backcountry. And my partner Ryan is a very experienced outdoor educator. He has a long history of taking and leading guiding trips through all kinds of different environments. And I come on the trip as the naturopathic doctor, and I'm versed in supporting the body and the mental health side of things. And so the way the programs have worked is there is generally like a weekend, backcountry camping excursion where we're maybe doing a long hiking trek, going to different campsites, having to overcome different obstacles, and not just I'm not talking like environmental obstacles, although certainly that can present itself with, bad weather and this kind of stuff, but just the emotional exhaustion that you inevitably experience with carrying a heavy pack on your back and having to schlep through, some more arduous trails. In those moments, that's when we really find out who we are, and we connect with a side of ourselves that maybe we hadn't seen before, or maybe we've forgotten this part of us because we're so in that routine and doing our same day-to-day thing. And that chance to get out of your comfort zone, to get connected with nature. We've had groups where, a parent and child have been on the trip, like a teenage child. And so these kinds of situations have been so good, not only for themselves as individuals, but for themselves in their relationship with one another. And to have that meaningful experience, to create those memories, to create that depth in their relationship of overcoming this together, it really creates ultimately just the sense of resiliency, of self-development, of building confidence in oneself, and knowing that you can go through hard times and come out the other side. And the exhilaration you experience when you're completed, it's like no other thing. I don't know. I'm someone who've always gravitated towards myself, like doing things, adventure type things, and doing triathlons and training and working through hard times, and just the excitement, the exhilaration that you experience. It really just makes you feel alive and kind of restores that inner spark in yourself. And so anyway, I feel like, sorry, I'm kind of rambling now, but anyway, the program does have that component of going backcountry camping, and we had been in the process of designing more, let's say, more beginner programs for people who maybe aren't like comfortable going that hardcore in the beginning. Like maybe they're open for like couple hours of a hike on a terrain that they're not familiar with, but having it guided and having meaning along the way. Ryan and I had created a program where not only was it about camping and hiking, but also about mindfulness. And we had different mindfulness-based activities along the way, different art activities. We had done some watercoloring because Ryan is actually quite an accomplished watercolor artist as well. So he was able to lead us through even a workshop in the backcountry, which is pretty cool. And myself as a naturopath, I was providing things like acupressure and doing stretching and things like that. We're leading the patients through stretching after a hard day's work. And so it really was a holistic program, or it is a holistic program. And so we're really looking forward to when it's safe to kind of offer those group programs once again, whether it's a weekend hike or for like a Saturday hike, or a more in-depth hiking backcountry trip.
Such a great kind of initiative, if that's what you would call it, and it's so it just makes me think about and obviously this is kind of from my world, and we're actually aligned actually really recently with a great organization called Tether. They are kind of a virtual men's group, I guess, so kind of more on the kind of male dominated, but it's kind of that peer support community. They have a lot of professionals involved, so yes, there's peer support, but there's also a lot of professional coaches involved with the organization, and there's a lot of connections with mental health professionals, etc. So there's kind of like those professional elements, which it much sounds like what you're doing. It's kind of all encompassing that, obviously with hopefully those live experiences. They're doing that remotely right now, but it just makes me think about the same thing. It's almost like and obviously it's not a men's group because, there's obviously male and female there. So, however you identify, that's obviously open with the hope approach, but it's that same kind of thing. It's that bonding, it's getting out of your comfort zone. I'm sure there's some grit and some resilience in there, but there's also the search for, I hear this all the time, I just don't know what I'm passionate about. However, people continue to live the same 16-hour cycle of their day and never explore anything. So it sounds like you had me hooked on your description, so you weren't rambling at all. It was hooking me in and making me want to do it. But it's just little things that, maybe you haven't gone out and painted a picture. Maybe you haven't gone out and done a hike. Maybe you haven't, explored something new and different. And number one, you've got people around you to do that. And number two, it's just opening you up to new people, new experiences. And I can't say enough about that. The world of podcasting and all the amazing people I get to speak to has broadened my world drastically. And it sounds like you're doing the very similar thing, with the Hope approach as well.
For sure. And actually, more recently, I developed an online program that's going to be starting in February 12th. And through it, so the program is called Restore Your Shine. So obviously we had to change gears a little bit with not being able to go in the backcountry. So we have a virtual program where it's going to be a 10-week program. There's going to be a mixture of me providing the educational components of maybe talking about nutrition or sleep, or how can we build endurance, how can we build resiliency. There's going to be some guest speakers, like maybe Ryan will make an appearance, wink wink. Right, so to tie in the Hope approach. And my sister is also going to be joining me. We're co-facilitating the program. She's, like you, a personal trainer, and so we're going to have different themes each week. So for example, we're going to talk about boosting energy one week, and that week she will be providing or leading us through more energizing exercise type postures, right? So she's a yoga teacher, so as well as a personal trainer, so maybe doing some sun salutations, some more kind of energizing poses, maybe things like planks and body weight exercises. And then when we do more, talking about sleep, mindfulness, we may be doing more restorative yoga type exercises. So our whole premise with the program, Restore Your Shine, is that, people are feeling a lot of drudgery, a lot of lack of inspiration, lack of motivation. To touch on what you said earlier, just not knowing what are their hobbies, what can I do, how can I connect with people. And so we've created this program with that very thought in mind, to bring people together, even if it is virtually. They're still, connecting with you tonight has been great. I really feel a sense of connection with you and Scott earlier as well. And so it's great. If people can open up to the idea and concept of meeting virtually, it will add a lot more enrichment to your life, especially in this time. And anyway, that's kind of what's been going on with the Hope approach right now. We're kind of taking a turn for a more virtual approach, but we won't be able to actually be leading people on those outdoor treks right now. But there is a section on it where we will be certainly talking about engaging in your hobbies, finding out what are your hobbies, what are your passions, what are things that you can do even throughout the pandemic to maybe learn a new skill, learn a new hobby. There's all kinds of things, like even for myself throughout the pandemic, I've picked up like the most oddest things. I've been exposed to the most random things. I started learning singing in Gaelic. I started taking Qigong. Like it's just all these weird things. I'm a yes person, so I say yes to a lot of things. And it ends up leading me to like the most coolest things that I never thought. I was never seeking out these things. They kind of just found their way to me, and I opened up myself and was willing to be vulnerable and try something that I had no experience with. And it just makes me feel more excited, more alive. It keeps me, restored. And I like to think I have a lot of inner spark and inner light that I want to share with my patients and share with my family and friends. Anyway, so that's kind of what's going on with the Hope approach.
Yeah, well, I for one hope that we can get back to some of those outback down those treks, off the beaten path, and provide that support. And we hear many stories on many of our episodes about kind of different projects that are doing that. I love the online initiative and having that kind of blend of your the fitness side, and then kind of the health and the mindset and the nutrition and all those other things coming together. And as you mentioned, people want to be connected to that. People want community, and this is where I've truly been find that kind of place to thrive again, with really this year particularly getting my online coaching back up and running quite extensively, which I kind of dropped a little bit while deciding I was going to do a podcast, which is what I did, something new during the pandemic, which will be a story for many years to come. But it's so important that we get that and we find that. And I, much like yourself, want to just be able to facilitate that and connect people. And it's been so great to do that. So be part of that connection, or be the person that creates that connection. That's so important. I'd love just Restore Your Shine, I believe. That was that right?
Yeah.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah,
Just let the listeners know where they can find out some more information. I'll put it in the show notes too, but I'd love just for you to share that with them as well, so they can check it out.
They can go either to my website. So it's simple. It's Dr. like Dr. Lisa T for my last name, T like Tabrizi, or T like truck, ND. So N is in naturopath, D is in doctor. So Dr. Lisa TND.com. And you can go to my Instagram handle at Dr. Lisa TND as well.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, go check that out. Check out the program, see all the amazing things, and via that you can also connect with Ryan as well, which I'm sure will be easy to find, and that's in our previous show notes. But I'm going to put all that in the show notes for everybody so they can find you both if they want to know a little bit more about the Hope approach, they want to know a bit more about Restore Your Shine and all the great things you're doing. And obviously, even if you are in the general vicinity, that kind of area, which is Hamilton, Ontario, great. But also, a lot of things virtual right now, so I don't even need to be in the same province or the same place in the world. So it's great. Much like
naturopath, I can only be seeing you in Ontario, where I'm only regulated to, unless you're in a province or state where it's not regulated, then I can see you wherever. But if you're in a province or state that is regulated, then I can't see you. But anywhere in Ontario right now is definitely open for business.
Awesome. So there you go. You got some naturopathic services. You got all the other amazing things you're doing, which is great. And I'm just really grateful, Lisa, to have you on the show and for your time, but also just to hear the alignment of what, so many things align. We spoke about being the best possible version, surrounding yourself. That aligns with the podcast, and a lot of the messages that you're talking to in your world and what I'm talking to in the world of fitness align. So I feel a great connection and alignment. So I'm really grateful for that. And if you had anything else you wanted to share before we sign off, go ahead. The mic is yours.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's been really great, and I hopefully look forward to maybe more talks in the future. There's so many different topics I think we could cover that your listeners, I'm sure, would be interested in. And feel free again, like I said, check out my Instagram. You can also check us out at the Hope Approach on Instagram as well. And I look forward to staying in touch.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for listening. We truly appreciate your support. If you enjoyed the episode, please share it. Tag us on your social media stories. Share. You can share directly a lot from your podcast apps directly onto your social media. Leave us a rating. Leave us a review. If you can, hit the subscribe button where you're listening today, and make sure you never miss any more episodes coming up in the future. And like I said, any support you can give, you can check us out on Patreon. You can check us out on buymeacoffee.com. We're on all these platforms, so we can continue to bring these amazing conversations and continue to, share these conversations all around the world. So apart from that, like I said, follow us on social media. Make sure you check out the show notes to find out where you can find Lisa, Ryan, and lots more information about the amazing work they're doing. And other than that, be the best possible version of yourself you can be. Keep making a difference in the world, and I'll catch you on the next episode.